Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Norm. It is November 2nd, 2018, and this is our update on the persecuted church around the world. Starting out with World Watch List number 29, Ethiopia. Our facts about Ethiopia. Their region, Africa, Islamic oppression is the persecution type. Level very high. They have a population of about 104 million people, 61 million of those Christian, closing in on 62 million. Main religion there is Christianity. Federal Parliamentary Republic is the government, and the leader is President Mulatu Teshome Wertu. Yeah, don't ask me to pronounce names right. I butcher them every time. Where their persecution comes from. In Ethiopia, Christian persecution stems from multiple sources: the government, Islam, secularism, and the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Government regulations restrict the freedom of religion, while in some parts of the country, conservative Muslims pose challenges for believers, especially converts. Secularism, particularly government bans on religious broadcasting and religious activities within schools, restrict the freedoms of Christians to worship, teach, and preach. Meanwhile, those who leave the EOC denomination face persecution from family members, communities, and government officials that are members of the denomination. While all Christians in Ethiopia face persecution, different denominations experience it in varying degrees. Protestants outside of traditional denominations experience the worst persecution at the hands of the government and the EOC denomination. Arrests and disappearances of believers are common in the country, and those who leave Islam or the EOC face harsh mistreatment, sometimes being denied access to community resources. In some cases, Christians are cut off from society completely. In the World Watch List 2017 reporting period, there were more than 100 violent incidents against Christians recorded in Ethiopia. In July 2017, a Muslim mob attacked a 27-year-old man in his home with machetes after first attacking and partly damaging a local church building in Herna, a rural town. The mob was incited over evangelism taking place in the area. Prayer points for Ethiopia. Things we can pray for. The government prayer points. Okay. The government fears that religious leaders could initiate a regime change, and as a result has severely restricted the activities of religious organizations. Pray for greater freedom for the church in Ethiopia, and for God to reveal His truth to Ethiopian government officials. Pray for unity between believers. Sadly, many divisions between denominations exist. Pray for reform within all churches claiming Christ in Ethiopia. Persecution from family and community are common. In many cases, Christians are denied community resources and are discriminated against when looking for work. Pray that the Lord would provide for the persecuted church in Ethiopia. An update from Persecution.org, International Christian Concern. China cracks down on house churches in Beijing. Why did that happen? Okay, sorry. Trying to read. And why does it keep doing that? House churches, or family churches, have become increasingly popular in China. After China launched a nationwide campaign a little under 3 years ago that has been closing down churches off and on. House churches provide safer places for Protestant and Catholic church alike to come and worship, with less fear of government authorities finding out. However, recently, Beijing has begun to crack down on these smaller churches who are not registered with the State Administration for Religious Affairs or the China Christian Council. An increasing number of house churches have been shut down for anything from not complying with fire safety regulations to not meeting the official standards set by the Chinese government. Despite the fact that religious freedom is acknowledged and guaranteed by Article 36 in the Chinese Constitution, which states that, quote, citizens of the People's Republic of China enjoy freedom of religious belief, unquote. Yet, this is not as good as it sounds. People can enjoy their freedom as long as it does not disrupt social order, undermine one's physical or public health, obstruct education, or participate in missionary relief or work. While this presents itself differently, some family churches have claimed that in Beijing, they have been told by officials that they should minimize the cross and religious gatherings and focus more on Xi Jinping, the president of China. In light of increased crackdown on church gatherings, the international community has stepped up in support of their fellow believers. Christians in Hong Kong from multiple different denominations drew up petitions in support of the Christians, urging Beijing to stop closing churches and cracking down on religious freedoms in the country. So here's the big thing with China and a few other countries, but China is one of those where it's really hard to have a church when the government ultimately opposes you. A lot of pastors get arrested, imprisoned for evangelism and different things, missionary work, and so on that they do in the country, and so it's probably even harder. I don't know. It's hard to, you can't really quantify or qualify persecution in one way. What's harder, whether it's from Islam, which is killing people, or having the government come against you. It's all persecution, and it's ultimately because they keep their faith in Christ, and they're focused on the fact that Jesus paid the penalty for their sin. This is not. These are not people who have been sold a story that Jesus is going to make their life better. They understand that with their faith comes persecution, and so they're willing to withstand the persecution because of their faith in Christ. So let's remember to pray for all of our brothers and sisters in Ethiopia and brothers and sisters in China who are just trying to preach the gospel, trying to worship Christ, and are persecuted, imprisoned, and just persecuted for their faith in Christ. I don't know what else I'm trying to say, but keep these people in your prayers. Continue to pray for them. Continue to raise awareness for our brothers and sisters around the world who are being persecuted simply because they believe in Christ. And as always, preach the gospel at all times. Use words. They're necessary. And until tomorrow, Soli Deo Gloria.